Suffolk Pod Show is produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk. I'm Mark Mason.
And I'm Susanna Hornby.
Episode 39. Introducing Sue Miller and Annie O'Neill, founders of OM Health and Wellbeing Consultancy.
Sue and Annie will be talking to us about how they are changing lives for the better and exploring issues such as managing stress and anxiety in the workplace, menopause in the workplace, and the importance of teaching sexual harassment awareness in schools, and how we as parents play an important part in educating our children on the matter. So first of all, welcome, Sue.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us. Hello.
And Annie, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us on the Suffolk Pod Show. We're really excited to be talking to you today.
That's wonderful, Annie. It's great to have you. Sue, may we start with you?
Absolutely. I'm the oldest, so it's more appropriate. Go on.
We are really looking forward to talking about those subjects that I've just mentioned. But first, let's do things in order. How and where did all this begin for you?
Right. Well, it's probably, you can hear I was born up north. I was actually born in Manchester, but grew up in Yorkshire, actually. I'm the eldest of 5 children, so I was always going to be probably going to that caring profession. Not that I knew that at that point, but my mum and my auntie were both nurses. Actually, when it came to career choices when I was leaving school, I was given the option. I remember my careers teacher bringing me in and saying, right, Susan, that was called Susan at that point. Susan, you can go into nursing or you can actually become a domestic science teacher, which, if anybody, so cooking, home economics, etc.
And if anybody listening knows Sue, they know that she can't cook.
I don't do cooking. So there was actually no choice at that point. It was actually absolutely, I have to go into nursing. I did my general training up in Yorkshire in a place called Airedale, near Keighley, and did 3 years up there. And actually, after I'd finished doing my general training, I was put on a children's ward. And that was the change for me. I, at that point, loved nursing children. It's a real when children are poorly, they're poorly. When they're getting better, they're getting better. There's no playing on it. So I really enjoyed it, and then decided to go and do my sick children's training. And I actually applied to Great Ormond Street and got in. So I actually went down to Great Ormond Street and trained at Great Ormond Street and got my sick children's from that way. So fascinating place, amazing place. I think I came out thinking most children have got either something rare wrong with them or some weird and wonderful syndromes. So, but then went on to work in a variety of children's hospitals throughout the country, really. Yeah. And then in the 90s, I'd had my children and wanted to start looking for something different. So I actually found school nursing. I applied and got a position in school nursing in Suffolk. And as they say, the rest is history. That was it, really, until we started OM in 2017. So that's me, really, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, obviously you're from Manchester, you grew up in Yorkshire, but you're now living in Suffolk. Where's the connection there?
Well, my husband actually worked in education and he worked for colleges and he got a place working at West Suffolk College. He came down here to work as a manager at West Suffolk College years ago. So what we're talking about, longer, nearly almost 30 years ago. Right. And that's why, you see, I now think I'm Southern. I think I've got a Southern accent. Everybody goes, no, you haven't.
So
but we came down to Suffolk with his job. And that was it, really. I mean, really, I couldn't then go back to Yorkshire or North.
They wouldn't let you in, would they?
Well, my children have got Southern accents.
You were too Southern.
My children would have got Southern accents. They'd have been bullied if they'd have gone back to Yorkshire. So yes, that's how we potentially came down to Suffolk.
And Annie, how about you? Where were you born?
So slightly different story. I'm very Southern. So actually, I don't go up north if I can help it. But no, born in London. Yeah. Born in London. And actually, from a very young age, all I could ever remember wanting to do was to be a nurse.
Really?
So, no question. When I was, 16, applied. And very fortunately applied to King's College in London and got a position. So I did my training there. I have to say, at the time that I was doing my training, it was just as they were starting to talk about taking all the student nurses off the wards and making it a degree course. I'm one of the nurses that actually, it was a very practical course, and we were on the wards most of the time. And at that point, I couldn't really work out how that was going to work in terms of, patient care and all of those sorts of things. So actually, having thought that's the only thing I ever want to do, I ended up leaving. And did lots of different things. Worked in recruitment, where I used to be a manager of a branch in a very beautiful place in London called Jermyn Street.
Very lovely.
But, really lovely. And worked in various different roles, worked for the Financial Times for a little while, just in the sort of back office bit, but then got married, had, children. And in much the same way as Sue, my husband at the time was a teacher. He trained to be a teacher.
Right.
So his second ever teaching job was at a school in Suffolk. So didn't know anything about Suffolk, never been to Suffolk before. And, we moved to Suffolk 24 years ago now. And did various things with the children. I was very fortunate. I was able to be a stay-at-home mum, and I was able to be at home until the children all started at school, and then thought, well, I need to do something which is going to be, friendly for children. So I actually worked in schools for quite a while, and actually worked in Suffolk in middle schools. And they closed, unfortunately, because I love middle schools. But I had to rethink, what did I want to do? And almost sort of never really considered it before, but it was my other half at the time who said, what about going back into nursing? And I actually hit it just at the right time. I made a phone call to West Suffolk Hospital, and they were literally, I think, a month away from starting a return to nursing practice course.
Gosh.
So signed up, did that. I can remember starting and thinking, I wonder whether or not I'm ever going to get a job as a nurse where I'm going to be able to do Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which obviously was more or less what I was doing as a teacher. And one of my tutors said, oh, you need to think about school nursing. And I did, to be honest, I didn't really know what school nurses did. I didn't have a clue, really.
Nobody really does, do they?
No, still don't. But just as I was finishing my course for return to nursing practice, I saw an advert for a school nurse and thought, okay, let's do it. Let's see what that's about. And so actually it was Sue that interviewed me back in 2006.
Okay.
So that's how we first met. And that was it. I think I'm not going to tell you how old I was, but because a woman never tells you her age, but it was at that point that I finally thought, you know what? I feel like I've really found where I should be. I absolutely love school nursing. I think it's an amazing job. Absolutely so passionate about it.
Well, tell us, Annie, just tell us a bit about school nursing, because as you just said, not many people know what a school nurse does.
Well, I think as soon as you say school nurse, people always think about the knit nurse, that used to come into school, and actually that is not what we do. School nursing is really about public health, and it's really about going into schools and working with families around prevention, rather than doing the bit where it's actually, fighting the fires. Obviously, there is some element of that, but actually it's about empowering young people and doing that prevention around getting them to understand how their bodies work, about sexual health, and actually giving them the knowledge that they need so that they can then become the person that keeps themselves safe.
Right.
So it's that preventative, it's that public health role, and talking about a whole range of different things. So, we would run, when I was working with Sue, I would say that probably in every single school in the patch that we worked in, every single child knew who we were. They knew that we were their school nurse. They may not have known our names, but they definitely knew what we did.
Yeah.
And actually that was because we used to go in and we'd used to do teaching, but we would also go in and do parents' evenings in schools. We really did that preventative bit so that people, and actually it was a real privilege because we were probably one of the professionals that every child saw us in a primary school and then would also see us again when they got to their upper school or their secondary school.
Yeah.
So I really felt like this was in my head, we can't live with regrets, but I always wish I'd known about school nursing way back. And maybe I wouldn't have left nursing at the point that I did. Maybe there would have been, it probably looked very different then. I don't know.
And it did, yeah. I think in the 90s, school nursing was very different. I think the public health role, it became more of, more about the public health and the prevention role, which I think is the bit that we both love, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And Sue, obviously you employed Annie. Good job too.
I did, yeah. I was her boss. Well, no, I was her boss. How things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can guess who's the boss now. But no, at that point, I was the school nurse in a fairly substantial town in Suffolk, looking for staff nurses. And this person came along to the interview, and it was lovely because it was such a, and I'll never hear the end of this now.
No,
but
I'm really sitting here wondering what she's going to say. It's going to make me.
The candidates had to do a small presentation and then an interview. And Annie's presentation was superb. And it was just that thought, I've got somebody here who can teach as well as a nurse, as well as all the other qualities I needed. And it was funny because the position was supposed to be shared between myself and
different
school
offices.
Nurse.
Yeah,
2 different offices. And I actually said, I will give you anything if I can have her in my office all the time. So I actually did a deal with my boss on keeping Annie with me. And it worked. So yeah, that's how it started really.
And of course, Susanna, she's never regretted it. Never.
And I haven't never ever regretted it. We get on very, very well.
Yeah, we do. Well, that comes across.
We're very different characters, but we complement each other very well.
Yeah, definitely.
So at some point you were was it in that office that you decided that you'd actually think you could do this together?
No,
well, we used to talk about it a lot, didn't we, Annie? We used to say things like, as we were going out, we used to say, my God, we knew that the schools really appreciated what we did. And because
and valued what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And they knew us very well. And we actually used to joke and say, oh God, we could sell this. We could do this for a living. I wonder if they'd be buy. And that had gone on for quite a number of years, hadn't it, Annie? That we used to have those talks about, because I think the problem with school nursing was, and it's just, it's general, that actually the first bit to go was the public health role, as the safeguarding role became a bigger role. And so you were doing less public health and doing more safeguarding, and that, that takes its toll. And it's also, you don't get the
it's not the most. I know it's not the most enjoyable part of the job.
No,
I would say.
Isn't. No,
so actually, and I think it was. We had those conversations, but then actually I went off. Sue was my career advisor, so I actually went off and did my training. So to become a school nurse, you have to do an additional year's training, so an additional degree. So I did that, and then actually I then got a job as a school nurse, but in a different area. So whilst we separated at that point, and actually my career advisor at the time, Sue, suggested after me being there for probably about 18 months that I then went into management, which I did, and moved over to actually managing a school nursing team and a health visiting team and a couple of children's centres at the same time. So quite a big change.
Jump.
Yeah, quite a big jump. But actually, and I think really enjoyed the role, but actually really wanted to concentrate on the school nursing bit of it.
Yeah.
And it was in 2017, we both worked for a local authority, and there was a local authority reorganisation. And it was at that point that I sat and thought, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I'm not sure this is where I want to be. And almost sort of had that thought in my head about, I wonder if now would be a good time to think about starting our own business. So talked to Sue about it, and we were both like, gosh, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
big jump. And it's a massive jump.
Yeah, huge. Well, we're always very proud. On our lanyards that we have with our names, we've got women in business and 15%, because actually 65% of women think about starting a business, but only 15% actually do it.
Really?
Yeah. So we were like, we were very fortunate. We met a mentor. We had a business mentor who was a colleague's husband. And we met in a coffee shop one day. And we'd sat together and done this. I think we'd done a spider diagram something about what potentially the business might look like, what we would want. We thought about actually, let's think about a potential business name. Let's think about what our vision would be, what our reason, our mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat with him in this coffee shop, and he basically said, I think it's brilliant. But you know what?
Yeah, we were shocked, weren't we?
Yeah,
like, oh my God,
we thought he was brilliant. We thought he was going to turn around and say, "No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
That's your normal job."
Yeah, but he actually said, "If you're going to do it, you need to do it now," because health and well-being was becoming a bit of a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
So we both walked away from that. It was so funny, wasn't it? We walked away and we literally crossed over the road and went into a different coffee shop on the high street, so that we could sit down and talk to each other and say, "Shall we?
Oh my God."
Yeah. what should we do? And we did. We did. We jumped.
So, and it is a leap from.
It was
huge leap. I
think we were both quite fortunate because Sue retired. Sue took early retirement, and I actually
that didn't work.
But you're working harder more now, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, 100% working more.
Yeah. I actually resigned, but we were both very fortunate in that because of the way that school nursing works, we were able to go back and do part-time as, bank staff. Yeah. So we were able in the first couple of years of our business to actually do the business, but also supplement our income by doing a few days with stuff, with school nursing. So,
and I think we also had a silent investor.
Yeah, we did.
But
really believed in what we.
Yeah, she really did, and it was lovely to have that belief behind us, and that made life a little bit easier at the time.
It did. It did.
Mm-hmm. Well, courage. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and you've done it, and you're doing it so well too. So, Sue, can you tell us a bit about the clients that you work with?
We'll work with anybody, but mainly within reason. Our first big contract was actually with a multi-academy trust. So, potentially we went in, first of all, with what we knew and went back into schools. And actually that carries on. And we do quite a bit of our work is in schools. But on the back of that, this business evolved. And it's beautiful to think how it did evolve, because it really evolved. Looking back now, the business that we started in 2017 to what we've got in 2021 is not what we envisaged.
No, not what we planned.
Not what we planned. But it has evolved beautifully, because what happened was through going into schools, it became, obviously with our public health role, it really helped. But obviously the other thing that became very apparent was that we were doing a lot of work with not just the children, but more with the staff, and with the teaching staff and the school staff. And that became more and more that we would be doing training for them or one-to-ones with them. And through that evolved then for it to go into corporate companies. Because, whether you're a teacher working in a school or whether you're a, PA working in a corporate company, you're an adult, and the worries and the anxieties, etc., are the same. So then that led on to us doing more corporate work. So I would say now, we do a whole host of things, but I would say probably a good 80% of our work is with adults, in various settings. We still do have that core of, we still do a public health role, but majority of what we do is training adults. We train trainee teachers. We, have workshops with that. So it varies completely. And so, we work both in schools and with corporate businesses as well.
Right.
Whether if you're talking to anxiety to a 14-year-old or a 40-year-old, the strategies, the feelings are all
remain the same. Yeah. It's just the way that you talk about it, I think, that changes depending on the age of the person.
Yeah.
But and I think one of the big things that we're very keen on is that actually we looked at becoming a social enterprise, but actually with just two of us, it didn't really fit. So we always said that we wanted to be a company with a social conscience.
Yeah.
And actually what we do is we subsidise the work that we do in schools by looking at the work that we do in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And actually it enables us to do much more in schools and to sort of think about our pricing appropriately because of that. So, we're really keen on that.
Yeah. No, just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So can we talk about some of the things that you consult on? let's start off with managing stress in the workplace. My goodness, isn't that everybody at the moment? What a different world we live in.
Yes,
Take it away. Tell us about how you deal and how you do that.
Well, I thought I'd talk about one of the corporate companies I specifically work with. I've been working with this company for about 2 years, and we have done a variety of things, but we do online sessions. So actually this year they've been online. At the beginning of when we first started to them, we went into the company and did some sessions around well-being. But more recently, I've done a couple of sessions on stress in the workplace and around Stress Awareness Week. And on the back of that, what happens is then people can come and speak to me on a one-to-one basis. Mm-hmm. And I get people with all sorts of things, variety of people with anxiety, people with low mood, people with, especially this year, there's been quite a significant amount of bereavement. But people can come with anything. It doesn't have to be work related. It can be, personal. It's a confidential service that I provide. Mm-hmm. And although I have got a diploma in counselling, we don't advertise it as a counselling service. I'm not a counsellor. We call it time to talk. Yeah. And that is exactly what it is. It's somewhere to go. And I think because I'm a nurse and I've got a nurse's hat, people feel that they can speak to a nurse about anything, which is great. But what tends to happen on the one-to-ones is the first session is probably about an hour. I do an assessment and it's just a general chat, trying to look at what's the issue with the person. And then after that, it can be, often it's signposting to GP or other services. But sometimes it's just finding, I do an awful lot of self-empowerment. We both do in our different companies, it's evidence-based, everything we do. We're great believers in self-empowerment, using different techniques and strategies.
And I think because we're nurses, we're very practical. Yeah. I think one of the big things that we both wanted was, we've all sat on training courses where actually they don't give you the little golden nugget right to the very end. And it's the last 5 minutes and you think, oh, that's the really good bit that I can take away. What we try to do is give us strategies and advice because we're very practical. And actually, this is what you can, it's about actually a lot of the time it's about empowering people to take responsibility for themselves. And actually, if you do some of this stuff, it really works. Yeah.
And so, a lot of the time it's just about listening to them. Where can you go apart from, you can pay for counts, but where can you go that, a nurse would sit and listen to you for an hour and it reduces to 45 minutes on the subsequent sessions. But, just to have somewhere to go and offload and say, this is really, I'm really anxious.
This is really hard.
Yeah. So that's what we provide in the companies. And the other thing we do alongside that is I find that a lot of managers, team leaders really struggle with mental health, really struggle. They're frightened of saying the wrong thing,
about talking to their teams about it.
Yeah. So, we put training together on how to have those difficult conversations with staff because, bereavements are classic. They would avoid the conversation rather than talking to the person. And, the person that's been bereaved, that's really hard for. So we do some work around that with team leaders, managers, etc.
It's interesting when you use the word corporate, but what you mean is any business.
It's
so
anywhere.
If I run a restaurant, I could be a hairdresser, I could be anything, retail obviously, or anything along any other line.
Yeah, one of the other companies is a letting agency. Right. So it varies.
It's a whole range.
It varies, but that doesn't actually differ from what we do with the school staff. We're still going and do one-to-ones with teaching staff. We do it, so I think it's with anybody, if there's a need there. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the company is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, who's going to talk about menopause in the workplace? Because I am astonished by these stats you've sent me.
I know.
Scary,
well, that's going to be me. And actually, really topical because I don't know if you saw Davina McCall's Channel 4 documentary.
I didn't, but I'm going to go and watch it.
Yeah, really amazing. Because actually, you know what? In some cultures, reaching the age of menopause, is celebrated as a time of real wisdom, and it's. But actually, in the UK, I think we brush it under the carpet, and it's not really talked about.
It's
very
Western
much.
society, isn't it?
Yeah. But actually, 51% of the population is female and will go through menopause. So I think it was so great to see someone who was so high profile taking on that baton, I suppose, in a way, and just raising awareness, because, you know, the stats are frightening. You know, 1 in 4 women actually think about leaving their jobs because of the symptoms that are caused by menopause. And quite often, because the symptoms are so diverse, people don't realise that actually it's menopause that's happening. People don't understand it. And I would say quite often people really struggle. You know, there's a huge percentage of women who, you know, yes, it's going to be different for everybody. Some women don't have any symptoms at all. And, you know, cope really well with it, but other women, you know, struggle and will need to get some additional support either through HRT, through counselling. But it certainly is something that we need to really think about in the workplace because of the impact it has on, you know, working practices, and in order to make, you know, I don't know, menopause friendly workplace, it doesn't need to be huge things that are changed. It can be really as simple as, could the desk be changed so that actually they're sitting by a window or away from a radiator? You know, could you provide a fan that they have, you know, a desktop fan? And so it's really, they're inexpensive things that can be done, but actually that makes a massive difference to a woman who is going through menopause and, you know, having some of those symptoms. It evolved for us around, you know, we were working within businesses, and we were getting women coming to us talking about, you know, some of those symptoms and how they were struggling at work. And that's when we put together a training course around, and we, you know, about let's talk about menopause. And really it's just about raising awareness, because I think half the battle is that people just don't understand. And especially not, you know, men as well as women don't really understand. And, you know, when we do the training, we put up the list of symptoms that are associated with menopause. Quite a lot of people are really surprised about some of the, you know, I can remember, and, you know, put my hand up, I'm a menopausal woman.
As I'm sure, age, aren't we?
I'm sure my other half will agree that I'm a menopausal woman. But, you know, I can remember having conversations with Sue and going through this phase where I would wake up in the morning and my hips were absolutely killing me. And I'd be thinking, but I didn't do any exercise yesterday. I didn't do anything unusual. And it was Sue who was like, but actually, you know what, that's a menopause symptom. And it's aching joints. And it's like, yes, you know, there are some, I think, that everybody associates with menopause.
Hot flushes.
But others, which people don't necessarily think actually that's menopause.
There's one which I know, and I've, you know, amongst friends and what have you, is the immense tiredness, because sometimes the men going through the menopause, you're awake for hours at a time at night. I mean, that's just all, you know, and then you've got to go to work the next morning. That's difficult.
It's huge.
And be firing on all cylinders. And deprivation of sleep is used as torture, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet through menopause, either because of hot flushes or just because you're just awake. It's just wakefulness.
One of our tips, if you want a tip for the night times, is that we recommend that you get single quilts on a double bed.
Single duvets.
So that single duvets.
Good
so
idea.
that you have, so you have 2 single duvets. He has the normal one, and you have
or she does.
And you have a much lighter one.
Yeah.
So
but
they have
have
the winter one on all year round, and you have the summer one. And actually, when you take it on and off when you're too hot, it just goes on the floor beside the bed, and you just pull it back on.
It doesn't become the middleman in the middle.
I tell you the other thing about that as well is that actually you can just turn the duvet over so you get the cool side.
That's a good idea.
It's just amazing. It is lovely without interrupting anybody else. So, and actually one of the most successful training that we've done has been where actually it's been made almost mandatory. Because we do get some where actually it's just women of a particular age that come.
And I think that works
training.
as well, doesn't it?
It does.
Because sometimes those women just want that space to say, this is how I feel. And with women of the same age as them, or women that know what they're going through. But the one you're talking about was fantastic, wasn't it? Yeah.
Because actually a lot of the, that senior management team that came, actually they're quite young guys, but they're managing menopausal women. So actually them having that understanding about what's going on was amazing, and actually resulted in, that particular company, they didn't have a menopause policy. So actually we consulted with them to draw up a menopause policy, and they came up with the idea of having menopause champions across the company.
Brilliant.
Somebody that actually, a menopausal woman who's who has those symptoms, somebody that they can see and go to and trust and talk to about what's going on for them.
I think it's empowering women, isn't it? It's saying, yes, this is happening to us, and we need to be empowered to do something about it, but also to make an awareness that actually in the workplace we do need to maybe pop off to the loo more often than other people, or open the window, close it, take clothes off, put them back on, whatever. I think it is that empowering of women.
I think, the awareness is important, like you said. And I think 100%. Apart from all the physical things that happen to a woman when she is going through the menopause, it's how she feels as well, because it's an end of an era, and you feel that you might be looked at rather differently than you were as a younger woman.
Well, and your body shape changes. Lots of different things change, but also, it plays havoc with anxiety, brain fog, and that impacts on mood.
Yeah. And it quite often coincides potentially for some women with a time when actually children are going off to university, and actually you suddenly start thinking, well, where's my place now? Because I'm not mum anymore, because they don't need me anymore. I can't reproduce anymore, so I don't feel like I'm a woman anymore. And it does make you really think about actually what is my place in this world. And it can be a really tricky time, really tricky.
Yeah, for lots of women, can't it? Yeah.
But there's lots of support out there, and your practical training and advice. And
we give lots of tips and things, ideas that might help. They don't help all women, but they might help. And, we get some quite positive feedback from those, don't we, Annie? That people say, oh my God, it's made such a difference. So, yeah.
And I absolutely agree with Davina McCall when she did her documentary. If men had menopause, I think there would be a huge amount more that's done into researching and, working out what the best treatments are.
But she's not having a go at men, is she? She's just saying that's it. Yeah,
that's the way it is, of course. But it would be very 100%. Different if they suddenly couldn't reproduce after, mid-50s. It would put a completely different. Mark's smiling at me. I'm going to move on. Right.
Quickly move on.
Now, onto something very sensitive indeed. Sexual harassment. Let's talk about that.
We're talking a lot when we go into schools around sexual harassment and consent. And I would say that actually right from when we were way back in, 2006, when I first joined school nursing, actually the message around consent has always been something that Sue and I have been actually banging on about, but saying actually, consent is so important. And I think in today's climate, actually, it's become, whilst it's very black and white, yes or no, actually, I think for lots of young people, it feels like the waters have been very muddied, and it becomes a lot more, I don't know, because of their access to things like pornography and, the internet, actually, it becomes a lot harder for them, I think. We do quite a few different lessons which involve consent when we go into schools. And at the moment, we're focusing, there's a push around, because of the Everyone's Invited agenda, that we're doing a lesson more around consent and consequences. And one of the figures that shocks both of us when we look at that is that, in a survey with young people under the age of 25 who are sexually active, 85% of them never expressly talk about consent in that relationship. And it's just like, wow, if you're not asking the questions, how do you know that you've got consent to do what you're thinking about doing? And it's quite often we get the response, well, it's about body language, and you just know.
You just know. That's what we say. You just know.
Yes, you just know. And it's just like, well, but do you? And, we get them to really think about body language can send, yes, 65% of our communication is with body language, but actually it can create really mixed messages. And we talk a lot about actually, how would you ask? You're not going to stand and say, could I have consent to give you a kiss? But what you might do is you might say, oh, do you like what I'm doing? And would you like me to do more of this? Or shall I stop? And it's about having, and I think it is about young people. I don't think it's because they don't worry about consent. I think it's just because, and I think pornography has got a part to play in that.
I think it has.
And, and we talk about pornography in primary schools because, in Britain, the average age that children see pornography for the first time is 10.
Right. Which is quite shocking, really, isn't it? Yeah. I think, and, we've talked about the reason that happens is because of the internet. When we were younger, the magazines were on the top shelf, or the dictionary. The dictionary opened up. You might open a penis and you might read a little bit, but that was it.
Now, you'd go into your school library, wouldn't you? And the dictionary would automatically open at a rude word because everybody wanted to look at it.
And the McKean's biology book, I remember that.
Yeah. Yes.
In fact, I think reproduction was on page 69. We always used to laugh about that.
Exactly.
Is that a bit rude? Sorry.
We were a bit worried about whether or not we were about to say that.
But nowadays they just have to put a word into Google and you're 2 steps away from hardcore porn.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it on purpose. Often it's by mistake. These children put it in, or a pop-up comes on and they go on it and there's the hardcore porn.
Or it's just about, natural curiosity. Yeah. You get to a stage of development as children and they want to learn about it and they're interested. And, the first port of call for them is the internet.
Yeah.
And actually, what pornography doesn't talk about consent. Pornography, it doesn't portray what, sexual relationships are like in a healthy relationship. So it just creates this different culture, I think, this different idea about actually what sex is about.
Yeah. And
so what we've been doing actually, Susanna, is we've been actually going in right from year one and we talk about appropriate and inappropriate touching. We talk about consent, obviously age appropriate.
Yeah.
But we actually use a lot of the NSPCC information resources. And actually, and we've actually been, Annie and I were talking about this and we were saying we've been doing this for years. So actually we've probably been doing the work that we need, we haven't changed the work we've been doing. This has been happening now for a while, but just getting children right from early on to realise that is, what is inappropriate and appropriate and what is consent and just that your body is yours and, nobody else touches it except you. So I think we start that very, very early on, which is really, really good. And that follows on into secondary school as well.
I've got a question for you. As a parent, let's say, of a 5 or 6 year old, am I happy with you teaching them about consent? Am I worried that I'm thinking, I don't want my child to know about that yet because she's too young?
So I suppose the way that we would do it though at 5 or 6 is, what we wouldn't be talking about consent. We'd be talking about anybody. We should always ask before we touch anybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Anywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. And I think there's implied consent in lots of things, like if they're playing a game of tag in the playground, if someone joins that game, they know that somebody's going to be touching them because actually that's about the game they're playing. But going up to somebody and just giving them a hug, actually we should be asking, would you like a hug? Or is it okay if I give you a hug?
Yeah.
And we should be doing that. And we should be doing that as parents. I think that, we should be talking to children about, actually, we shouldn't touch anybody unless we ask first, if that's okay.
I think COVID's probably made that,
that's made the job easier.
Yeah, it has in a way. Please don't hug anybody,
Yeah.
The research is really clear from the NSPCC that actually we do go in at age 5 and 6 and we name the parts of the body and we give them their proper names. And actually we're very matter of fact about it. And I always say, we don't have any problem about calling our ear our ear. Why do we have any problems about calling any other part of our body the proper name? And actually in those cases where, there has been inappropriate touching, when children know the proper names of the body, actually it makes it much easier for it to be investigated and looked at and, all of those sorts of things. We need to name the parts of our body what they're called.
Yeah. Now, talking about, it's not just exclusively you do sexual harassment work. Where else would you consult?
So in any workplace, I think, you know, I think that is very much about that culture, isn't it? You know, there's, you know, if there's a culture, and it's interesting. I was talking to one of my daughters recently about this, and she's 27, works up in London, and we were talking about what all of this, you know, the whole sexual harassment and all of that sort of stuff. And one of the things that she was saying is that it's so important to think about your company culture. And she said, you know, in companies where there's a culture where it's about the banter and whatever, you know, actually there tends to be more, and this is a really sweeping statement, I know that, but there tends to be more acceptance, I think, that it's just a bit of fun. And actually it is about switching that culture. And, you know, the report that's just come out around, you know, in schools, children don't report to teachers when somebody's brushed past in a corridor and accidentally touched them on a private part of their body, because they don't think teachers take it seriously. But, you know, but we do need to take it seriously, because that is not acceptable.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the banter thing that you were talking about too. I mean, now you're touching on bullying as well, which is just something I'm sure you deal with as well, but still, good grief. I could listen to you two all day.
We could talk all day, Susanna, that's the problem.
I hadn't noticed.
Shutting us up is the biggest problem,
It's fascinating stuff, and such fundamental parts of our well-being, so important. As you say.
And I think that's probably the bit that we haven't talked a lot about, the fact that we do a lot of well-being. We do a lot around coping with anxiety, and looking after your own well-being, because it's massively important. Yeah,
we bang on about self-care quite often.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
How do we connect to you to continue a conversation? For anyone listening who'd like to talk to you, how do they do that?
We're across all of social media channels, so Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. But actually, we would really like, as a result of the podcast that we're doing with you today, we would really like to offer a free 10-minute wellness in the workplace webinar, details of which will be following shortly and will be available by connecting with us either on our website,
omhwc.org.uk.
Okay.
On Instagram or Twitter, our handle is @om_HWC. And on LinkedIn, we're just OMHWC.
Super. That's fantastic. Very nice of you to offer that.
Well, I think, and again, it's, you know, I think I'm hoping that it's come across during the course of this that we feel really passionately about it, and we really, you know, we so want to empower people to, you know, to be better. Yeah. And actually, you know, we volunteer for a charity called Action for Happiness. And, you know, it's about how do we just create this well-being, this, you know, happiness within the world, I think.
Just do our little bit in our corner. That's, you know, if we can, it's just about, you know, if just trying to make a little bit of a difference.
That's Sue, whereas I'm saying, no, we're going to conquer the world.
And I'm just saying, we just do our little bit in our corner of the world, which just makes a difference. Yeah.
That's why you work so well together. Listen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, just before we go, can I just say, because I don't think we mentioned the OM bit is O'Neill and Miller, because Annie is Annie O'Neill and I'm Sue Miller. Because just so that people are aware, because it sounds a bit and it's not really a lot to do with yoga, or so it is O'Neill and Miller, and that's where that came from. Yeah,
I'd guessed that. But then,
oh, had you?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, did you? Not many people do, actually.
Lots of people don't. One of the funny things that happened right at the beginning of the business, when we were thinking of names and trying to think of different names, one of the ones we came up with Sue Annie. So it was Sue and Annie together as one word. And our children turned around and went, no. Absolutely no, not. So when we got the red light for OM, we went with it. So before we go, I think we should really mention our children and our other halves, because I think they've been great with us, you know, in the last 4 years. You know, our other halves have put up with us and they've had to listen to all our moans and groans, but our children have really been supportive as well.
And really, I think they feel really proud of us.
Yeah, they do. They tell us, don't they? They say we're really, really proud of you to be doing this. So, you know, and especially, and I'm going going to say it because it's Annie's daughter Lily, who, without Lily,
I never know why she gets a mention. But anyway,
without Lily, our IT would be atrocious. She is our IT person. She helps us, and she's so patient, bless her. So yes, so thank you to them all.
Lily, I hope you're charging a lot of money.
No, Susanna, it's free.
Oh yes, that old adage. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Annie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Problem. It's been lovely.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the Suffolk Pod Show. Find us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or you can visit our website, podtalk.co.uk. And here's our disclaimer.
The Suffolk Pod Show will not be held responsible for any omissions or errors in its podcast.
The Suffolk Pod Show is produced purely for entertainment purposes. Views and opinions are that of our own or that of our guests.